All right, let's get right into it today. We're going deep on a topic that's both ancient and like super modern psychedelics. We're
Yeah.
going to explore how these substances kind of bridge the gap between ancient rituals and modern science and how they can alter our perception and even, our brain structure.
Right.
You've given us some incredible articles and notes, and
Yeah.
it seems like you're really interested in like the potential of psychedelics.
Absolutely.
From ayahuasca ceremonies in the Amazon
Yeah.
to the impact of LSD on something called neuroplasticity.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's get started.
let's get started.
I think what I find most fascinating is that for centuries, like cultures around the world have used psychedelics in their spiritual practices, but only recently has like science begun to catch up,
Yeah.
exploring how these substances work on the brain and their potential for healing.
It's like we're rediscovering ancient wisdom through the lens of modern science.
Exact.
Your notes mentioned the use of ayahuasca in the Amazon rainforest.
Right.
Can you tell us more about that?
So ayahuasca, it's a powerful brew
Okay.
that has been used for centuries by indigenous tribes in the Amazon for healing and spiritual exploration.
Oh.
And it's traditionally prepared with a combination of plants containing DMT,
Right.
a potent psychedelic compound.
Okay.
And what's intriguing is that these ceremonies often involve a shaman who guides participants through their visions
Okay.
and helps them interpret their experiences.
So it's like a guided tour through the depths of your own consciousness.
Yeah, you could say that.
That sounds intense.
It can be.
And your notes also mention the Aztecs and their use of psilocybin mushrooms.
Yes, the Aztecs called these mushrooms Tianacatl,
Tionacatl.
meaning flesh of the gods.
Oh.
They used them in religious ceremonies to connect with divine forces and gain spiritual insights.
Okay.
It's just a powerful example of how deeply intertwined psychedelics have been with human spirituality for millennia.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if these ancient cultures were tapping into something profound.
Right.
Something we're only beginning to understand now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a lot of fear and misunderstanding surrounding psychedelics.
Yeah.
People often associate them with negative things like brain damage or addiction.
Unfortunately, yeah, those are common misconceptions, often fueled by misinformation and propaganda.
Right.
Scientific research is actually showing that psychedelics, when used responsibly, don't fry your brain.
Good.
In fact, some studies suggest they might actually promote neuroplasticity,
Oh, wow.
which is the brain's ability to change and adapt.
So instead of damaging the brain, they could actually be helping it grow and form new connections.
That's what the research is suggesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about this neuroplasticity and how psychedelics might be involved?
It's still an emerging area of research,
Okay.
but there's growing evidence that psychedelics can increase the growth of new brain cells and connections.
Ah.
This could be incredibly beneficial for people struggling with conditions like depression, where the brain can become stuck in negative thought patterns.
So it's like psychedelics could be rewiring the brain,
Mm-hmm.
helping it break free from those patterns and create new, healthier ones.
It's a good way to put it.
That's a really interesting concept.
It is.
It is.
And there's another fascinating aspect of psychedelics,
Oh,
their ability to dissolve the ego.
the ego.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that our sense of self?
Exactly, our sense of
What
self.
does it mean to dissolve it?
Well, ego dissolution is a common experience
Huh?
reported by people who use psychedelics, and it involves a temporary loss of the sense of self, often accompanied by feelings of interconnectedness with everything around them.
So you're saying that like
Yeah.
your sense of self kind of fades away and
Yeah, you
you
could.
feel more connected to like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good way to put it.
That's interesting.
It is.
Good. Now that sounds truly mind-bending.
It can be a very profound experience.
Yeah, I'm curious, what does that actually feel like?
Right.
Can you give an example of how someone might experience ego dissolution?
Well, imagine feeling like the boundaries between you and the outside world are dissolving. You might feel a sense of unity with nature or other people,
Right.
or even the entire universe.
Wow.
It can be a profound and sometimes challenging experience,
Yeah.
but it often leads to a shift in perspective and a deeper understanding of one's place in the world.
Wow. So it's not just about seeing cool visuals. It's about fundamentally changing how you perceive yourself and your connection to everything else.
Absolutely.
That's pretty incredible.
It is.
And I understand that this ego dissolution can also lead to increased creativity.
That's right. When the ego dissolves, the mind becomes more open to new ideas and connections.
Okay.
Many artists and musicians have reported that psychedelics have helped them tap into their creativity in new ways.
So could psychedelics be like a catalyst for unlocking creative potential?
It's definitely a possibility. There's certainly a long history of artists and innovators exploring altered states of consciousness through psychedelics.
This is all fascinating stuff, but I'm also aware that psychedelics have a bit of a controversial history,
Yeah.
particularly with the counterculture movement of the 1960s.
Right.
How did that era shape public perception of these substances?
Well, the 1960s were a pivotal time for psychedelics.
Good.
Figures like Timothy Leary and Ram Dass promoted their use for spiritual exploration and personal growth.
Right.
However, there was also a lot of experimentation, recreational use, and unfortunately some negative outcomes.
Right, like the whole turn on, tune in, drop out philosophy.
Yeah, exactly.
Did that end up hurting the reputation of psychedelics?
It definitely contributed to the backlash and eventual crackdown on psychedelic research.
Okay.
The association with the counterculture movement led to a lot of stigma and misinformation,
Right.
which unfortunately persists to this day.
Yeah, so how did we go from this period of social experimentation and backlash
Mm.
to the current resurgence of interest in psychedelics,
Yeah.
particularly in like the medical and scientific communities?
I think several factors have contributed to this shift.
Mhm.
Firstly, there's been a growing recognition that the war on drugs has failed to address the complexities of substance use
Okay.
and that a more nuanced approach is needed.
Okay.
Secondly, there's a growing mental health crisis, and traditional treatments aren't working for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This has led researchers to explore alternative approaches,
Okay.
including psychedelics.
And thirdly, we're seeing a renewed interest in spirituality and alternative ways of healing,
Absolutely.
which aligns with some of the traditional uses of psychedelics.
That's a great point. It's like we're coming full circle, reconnecting with ancient wisdom while utilizing modern scientific methods to understand the potential of these substances.
It's an exciting time for psychedelic research.
It is.
That's for sure. And it seems like we're on the verge of a paradigm shift
Yeah.
in how we view and utilize these substances.
I agree we're entering a psychedelic renaissance, but
Yeah.
it's crucial to approach it with caution and responsibility.
Right, we need to make sure we're learning from the mistakes of the past and prioritizing ethical use, safety, and respect for cultural traditions.
Exactly.
But before we dive into those ethical considerations,
Okay.
let's take a moment to explore the science behind how psychedelics actually work on the brain.
Yeah, let's do that. So we were just talking about how psychedelics are being seen in a new light, right?
Mm.
Moving from like that counterculture image to a potential source of healing and therapeutic breakthroughs.
Right.
And what's particularly interesting is how these substances work on the brain.
Yeah. I'm really eager to understand, like, the science behind these profound experiences people describe. What's actually happening in the brain when someone takes a psychedelic?
Okay, well, imagine this complex network of pathways in your brain, like neural highways, bustling with activity, you know?
Okay, I can picture that.
And psychedelics, particularly those like LSD and the psilocybin, they interact with a specific type of serotonin receptor called the 5-HT2A receptor.
Okay, so serotonin, that's a neurotransmitter involved in mood regulation, right?
That's right.
And these receptors, they're like docking stations
They get layered.
where serotonin binds and sends signals.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so what's fascinating is that when psychedelics bind to these 5-HT2A receptors, they trigger this cascade of events that lead to altered perception cognition and even emotional processing.
So it's not just about hallucinations.
Right.
It's about changing how the brain processes information and experiences the world.
Exactly. One of the key areas that is affected is the default mode network, or DMN.
Okay, the default mode network.
Yeah, think of the DMN as the brain's control center for self-reflection and rumination.
Okay.
It's active when we're thinking about ourselves, our past, or like future worries.
So it's like the DMN is responsible for that constant inner monologue we all have.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
The chatter.
The chatter, exactly.
Okay.
Now, what psychedelics do is they temporarily reduce activity in the DMN,
Okay.
allowing other parts of the brain to communicate more freely.
So it's almost like silencing that inner critic
Yeah,
and allowing new connections to form between different regions.
precisely.
That's fascinating.
And it is.
So instead of the brain operating on its usual autopilot, psychedelics kind of shake things up and allow for new perspectives and insights.
Exactly. This disruption of the DMN could explain those feelings of ego dissolution and interconnectedness that people often report.
Right, because with the boundaries of the self loosened, there's that sense of unity with everything around them.
That's the idea.
That's so interesting.
It is.
And this rewiring of the brain,
Yes.
this increased neuroplasticity we were talking about earlier, could be what leads to lasting positive changes in people's mental well-being.
That's the theory many researchers are exploring. The increased communication between different brain regions could be key to breaking those negative thought patterns and fostering new, healthier ways of thinking and feeling.
It's truly remarkable how something that alters our perception so profoundly can also have such a deep impact on our brain structure and function.
Right.
It makes you wonder about the untapped potential of these substances.
Indeed, and the more we learn about how psychedelics interact with the brain, the closer we get to understanding their therapeutic applications.
Right.
For example, recent studies at Johns Hopkins have shown promising results in using psilocybin to treat depression and anxiety in cancer patients.
It's incredible to think that a substance once demonized and outlawed could now be used to help people find peace and acceptance in the face of a terminal illness.
It really is a remarkable shift.
It is. Are there other conditions where psychedelics are showing potential?
Absolutely. There's been a growing body of research investigating the use of MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy,
Right.
in treating post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that MDMA seems to create a sense of safety and trust,
Okay.
allowing patients to revisit those traumatic memories without being overwhelmed by fear or anxiety.
So it's like MDMA is creating a safe space for processing trauma, enabling patients to work through those experiences in a therapeutic setting.
Exactly, that's the idea. Early clinical trials have shown that MDMA-assisted therapy can be remarkably effective in reducing PTSD symptoms, even in cases where traditional therapies have failed.
This all sounds very promising,
Yeah,
but I'm also aware that with such powerful substances
right.
comes certain risks and ethical considerations.
Absolutely.
We need to ensure that psychedelics are used responsibly and safely, right?
Absolutely. That's a crucial point. As psychedelics gain wider acceptance and accessibility, we need to be mindful of those potential risks and ensure that their use is guided by ethical principles.
For instance, we were discussing earlier how certain cultures have been using psychedelics for centuries
Yeah.
as part of their spiritual traditions.
Right.
How do we balance scientific exploration with respect for these indigenous practices?
That's a vital question. There's a real danger of cultural appropriation and exploitation.
Right.
It's essential that we approach these traditions with humility and respect, recognizing the deep knowledge and wisdom they hold.
And how do we ensure equitable access to psychedelic therapies?
Mm.
It wouldn't be right if these treatments were only available to the wealthy or privileged.
I completely agree. Accessibility and affordability are crucial considerations.
Yeah.
We need to create systems that ensure everyone who could benefit from these therapies has the opportunity to access them.
And what about safety?
Right.
Psychedelics can induce powerful altered states of consciousness.
Yes.
How do we ensure people are using them in a safe and supportive environment?
That's another critical aspect. Set and setting are crucial.
Okay.
Set refers to the individual's mindset going into the experience,
So-
while setting refers to the physical and social environment.
Got it.
So it's essential to create a safe and supportive container for these experiences with trained facilitators or therapists who can guide individuals through any challenges that might arise.
It sounds like we need to proceed with a delicate balance of enthusiasm and caution.
Yeah.
On one hand, there's this incredible potential for healing and personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we need to be mindful of the risks and ensure ethical and responsible use.
Exactly. It's about navigating this new frontier with wisdom, respect, and a deep understanding of the complexities involved.
This has been a truly eye-opening conversation.
It has.
And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
Before we wrap things up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the future holds for psychedelics.
Okay.
Do you think we're on the cusp of a major shift in how society views these substances?
Yeah, it is. It's a really exciting time to be exploring this field.
Yeah.
I think we're on the cusp of a psychedelic renaissance with a growing recognition of their potential to
Sure.
address some of the most pressing challenges facing humanity.
That sounds incredibly optimistic.
Yeah.
What specifically makes you so hopeful about the future of psychedelics?
Well, for one, the research is advancing so rapidly, we're gaining a much deeper understanding of how they work on the brain and how they can be used to treat a whole range of conditions,
Yeah.
from depression and anxiety to, addiction and PTSD.
And we're also seeing a shift in public perception too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
More and more people are becoming open to the idea of using psychedelics for therapeutic purposes.
Exactly. The stigma surrounding psychedelics is slowly fading as more people share their positive experiences, and scientific evidence is emerging to support their therapeutic benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Documentaries, books, even mainstream media outlets are starting to present a more balanced and informed perspective.
It's like we're finally moving past the fear and misinformation that has clouded our understanding of these substances for so long.
Yeah, I think so.
But as we move forward, how do we ensure that psychedelics are used ethically and responsibly?
Right. Well, that's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah,
We need to create safeguards to prevent abuse and exploitation, and we need to ensure that psychedelic therapies are accessible to
right.
everyone, regardless of their background or financial status.
And we need to prioritize safety,
Of
right?
course.
Making sure people have access to proper guidance and support before, during, and after these experiences.
Absolutely. Education is crucial. People need to understand the potential risks and benefits,
Hmm.
the importance of set and setting, and how to integrate their experiences in a meaningful way.
It's like we're creating a new roadmap for navigating these altered states of consciousness.
Yeah.
A roadmap that prioritizes safety, respect, and the potential for personal growth and healing.
That's a great analogy. And as we embark on this journey, it's important to remember that psychedelics aren't a panacea.
Right.
They're powerful tools, but they're not a quick fix for all of life's problems.
So it's not about escaping reality,
Right.
but rather about gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
Exactly. Psychedelics can help us break down the walls we've built around ourselves,
Okay.
expand our perspectives, and connect with something larger than ourselves.
It's like they're offering us a glimpse into a different way of being, a more interconnected and compassionate way of relating to ourselves and the world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I believe that potential for increased empathy and connection could have profound implications for how we address some of the most pressing challenges facing humanity today.
I'm curious, what kind of challenges are you referring to?
Well, think about the global issues we're facing, like climate change, political polarization, social injustice.
Yeah.
These problems stem from a lack of understanding, compassion, and cooperation.
So you're suggesting that psychedelics could help us bridge those divides and find common ground.
It's a possibility worth exploring. If psychedelics can help us dissolve the ego and experience a sense of interconnectedness, perhaps they can also help us see beyond our differences and recognize our shared humanity.
It's a radical idea,
It is.
but a hopeful one.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if these substances could be a catalyst for positive social change.
I share that hope. Of course, it's not a simple solution. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of research education and responsible integration. But I believe that psychedelics have the potential to play a really significant role in shaping a more conscious and compassionate future.
As we wrap up this deep dive,
Right.
what's the one key takeaway you'd like our listener to remember about psychedelics?
I think the most important thing is to approach them with curiosity, respect, and a discerning mind. Do your research, prioritize safety, and be open to the transformative possibilities that these substances offer.
That's great advice to your listener. As you continue to explore this fascinating realm, remember to stay informed, stay safe, and stay curious. Who knows what incredible discoveries await?
The journey's just beginning.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of psychedelics. We hope you've enjoyed the ride and that it sparked your own curiosity about these powerful and complex substances. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.